Welcome to Coming Home, Survive and Thrive in Homeschooling. This week I have another interview for you. I have two adult homeschoolers, a brother and a sister. We talk about balancing sporting involvement with the bookwork, the difference homeschooling has made to their relationships with each other, and their thoughts about how homeschooling was for them. It will be reassuring to parents and students listening. Back in podcast 54, I interviewed Helen, their mother. Now you can hear both sides of the story. Before we start and hear what Kate and Matt have to say, can I remind you to please subscribe to my channel and pass it around to other homeschooling families? And if you need to contact me, go via my website, cominghomeinfo.com. Thank you, Kate and Matt. Matt or Matthew?
Matt's fine.
Matt's fine. Okay. We're agreeing to be interviewed about your life as a homeschooling child and teens. And I knew you when you were both really quite young. So I feel privileged to have just seen and watched in the background, seeing you all growing up. And so it's a very special time for me today to collect some of those memories together. Because somewhere along the line I was involved in a few.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And your kids.
Yes, that's right.
Smith family.
Yes, that's right. All the basketballing and they were good days.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I feel like it's a nice opportunity for us as well, and I think it's probably not a topic, that we touch on so much anymore, so it would be nice to reflect it. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, pleasure. Pull out some of those memories and enjoy them. So can you, first of all, start by saying how long you were homeschooled for? So right from the beginning, give the people who are listening a background.
Yeah, so I'm the eldest, and Mum started homeschooling me from 5 all the way till I went to high school in year 12. So I don't know how many years that is, but yeah, most of my schooling life. And I guess Mum enrolled me at the local school, and they didn't have a spot for me, so she was like, oh, we'll keep her home, and then that's kind of how it started, and I just never went. And
Yeah, and then we have a middle sister, but I'm the youngest, so similar. I was homeschooled all the way till year 13, and then I went to school for just 1 year right at the end, which when I tell people that, they're like, oh, why would you go for 1 year right at the end? But that's just how it worked out, and yeah, we actually both had a similar experience in that because we both went to school for 1 year. Mainstream school, I should say.
And in all honesty, we probably both went for sport.
Yeah.
So that we could play at high school nationals, etc. So that was the big, I guess, driver for us to actually go to school.
Yeah. And I think for me too, I'd done correspondence school, like the NCAA system, for 2 years previously to going to a high school. And I did that because I kind of really felt like I wanted to go to university. And we had known, and I think you guys actually were an example of maybe the Massey Uni and assessing the curriculum and all of that kind of thing. But I think for me, I just wanted to have more of that traditional lead-in to getting, your grades assessed and doing the subjects requirements and getting your scores and all that kind of stuff. So I'd already been doing NCA, so I felt like that was not, Kate's right, like we did go for sport, but that was a little bit of like a secondary motivation for me.
Do you think if it wasn't, I realise it's hypothetical, but if sport wasn't the issue, do you think you just would have carried on at home, or did you want to go to school?
That's a good question.
I think for me, in my early years, I think I did want to go to school, and Mum kind of had made the decision that they wanted to home educate. And then I think as I got older, I didn't really have that desire anymore to go to school. I obviously got into the groove of being home educated and was enjoying my time. So yeah, potentially not.
Yeah, I think if I had had the same access to sporting opportunities and could play on the same type of teams and go on the same tournaments and have all of those similar level practices with the coaches and all those kinds of things, then Yeah, probably not, to be honest, but that's just was the reality, right? So we just kind of knew that going in.
Yeah. And then our middle sister, she never went to school, so she was home educated from 5 all the way to...
Yeah. And she also had very similar, like, to be fair, like basketball experiences and representation at, like, you know, higher levels and stuff. So it's not like us going to school really propelled us massively forward, I don't think.
Yeah.
It just was what we decided to do.
Mm. Let's stay on the sport for a while then. I was going to bring it up later, but it seems like a good idea to do it now. It played a really big part. That's just my observations looking into your family. And your parents were major initiators, which benefited the whole homeschooling community. So maybe you could mention that. But more about how it was for you personally, with the advantages of homeschooling that brought that in, and how it kind of shaped around your bookwork. We'll do the bookwork stuff later. But let's talk about how you managed to, you know, sandwich that in.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess a bit of context, because my dad, he ran the YMCA on the North Shore, so he ran a basketball facility, which was kind of our second home, right? And then ultimately that ended up being kind of the hub for a lot of sporting, but also non-sporting activities of homeschooling community, as you know. So we definitely spent a lot of time there and training and time with coaches. But I think the biggest thing that it gave us was flexibility. You know, like, I don't know if that's normal or allowed, but we would often train during school hours, and facility use is, you know, you're able to get into the facilities a lot more. People are less busy, and so we took advantage of that. And then I also think about when, you know, we were lucky enough to make, you know, junior national teams and representative teams at regional level and stuff like that. And we could structure our academic side of things around that. So it never really felt like we were missing out on certain school days or certain learnings, because we would just pick up where we left off, or we would prepare for it. Probably not as much as Mum would have liked, but, you know, like, we had the flexibility to just kind of shape things around it and kind of, to your point, sandwich it into, you know, what our goals were and also what, like, our parents valued and thought was important too. So, yeah, I think the flexibility piece is probably the massive draw card.
Kate, have you got anything to add?
No, I think Matt's kind of covered it all. Definitely the flexibility of not having to try and share gym time with others at 5 p.m. We could do it, you know, get some hours out of school in the morning and then go to the gym at midday or something. So that's definitely an advantage that we had for sure.
Yeah, I think you see a lot of individual sports people. Like, I remember, like, a lot of gymnasts, or, like, would hear about, like, golfers being homeschooled and stuff like that. And playing basketball, there was definitely some limitations that we experienced being homeschooled. Like, we weren't allowed to enter secondary school tournaments, and we were cut out of certain things, and and we, you know, in the basketball landscape, you play for your school and you also play for a club. And obviously for us, our main thing was the club, so we didn't get the same type of access for kind of our junior, I guess, basketball experience. But at the same time, I think we were able to do things differently to those kids that played traditional school sport. We were able to do training during the day, like we said, and stuff. So I don't know, I think it kind of all swings and roundabouts, and you make it work, and it has its positives and also its setbacks, but I think for us it worked out.
So for your family, sport ended up to be more than just something that children really love to do. It was carried on right through your high school years with strategy. And tell us from your latter high school years and then into your adulthood, what part sport plays right up to now.
I think relationships is a big one. So I think just that team environment, you're working with so many different personalities and people of, like, different ages and different backgrounds, etc. So I think just, it was nice for us to grow up in that environment and get to know people that, you know, from outside our area and different places. And I'm still really good friends with girls that I played under 12s with, you know, like, still best of friends. So I think, I think just that generic stuff of teamwork, and that's kind of carried over into like work life and stuff now of, you know, just being able to like listen to opinions of different people. And yeah, I like to think that I now am like a team player in life as well. So that's probably the two biggest things for me. Yeah.
And what part does sport play in your life now?
So my full-time job, really. So I guess out of school I was working for like the regional basketball club, I guess, and then now I'm working at a national level and working in operations, and I love it. Like, I'm very blessed to be doing something that I enjoy. And yeah, my whole family's still very involved. So like you say, it's not just something that we did as kids, we're still very, very much involved in the sport. So
yeah, I would agree. I think the other thing, and I now coach basketball, so it's kind of an interesting like full circle. You get to like now view it from the lens of looking back down to kids that are going through, you know, those 14, 15, 16-year-old years and experiences. And I think for us, you know, one thing that I feel really proud about, and it's what our parents also encouraged, was I think we are quite hardworking people, and I think sport, and particularly once you get a little more competitive with it, like it really teaches work ethic, and it teaches discipline and sacrifice. You know, like we would spend weekends away and traveling, and you'd wake up early multiple times a week, and you know, not that that's necessarily different to doing other things as well, but I think that was kind of, basketball was the vehicle that instilled those values into us. And so, yeah, similar to Kate, I'm working full-time in basketball and have worked at for a regional basketball association as well. And I currently coach in the high school space in Auckland, and also am involved in the junior national team space as well, for the national body as well.
So just to be really clear to the people listening, this is not on volunteer basis. This is a paid income. You've made careers in sport, basically.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I think, I mean, Kate can speak for herself. I think from the coaching side of things, it's taken a little bit of time. You know, like the profession itself isn't necessarily one that's well remunerated. So I've had to kind of balance a few things. I'm lucky to be in a position now where I can say I work in basketball full time, but that wasn't necessarily always the case. So yeah, juggling other things, and I did go to uni and get a bachelor's degree in property, but I haven't used that. But I have done other things just to kind of support myself. But yeah, I am lucky enough to work in basketball full time now.
Yeah, and I think Matt's like made that happen for himself. Yeah, he could easily have still be coaching voluntary, or, you know, not having enough money to support himself full time. So yeah, he's done really well in the fact of putting proposals together and, you know, showing his worth to schools and organisations. So, because a lot of people, you know, don't get paid for coaching. So he's done really well. And yeah, for me, I have for a wee while now been paid like full-time employment. So I'm a little bit different, like I work for an organisation. Yeah.
Living the dream, really, isn't it? For people who love sport. But I take your point, and I absolutely agree. From watching you growing up over the years, you've worked really hard for this. You're not in these positions by dumb luck. You deserve them, and you've worked your way in. So well done. Can we talk about some advantages that you recognise there are from being homeschooled? What are your thoughts?
I'll start.
Okay.
I think, yeah, looking back now, I think just like the bond that we have as a family is like really, and I think now I'm a new mum. Yeah, I notice it more now, and I'm grateful for it. But yeah, we are really close, and we just got to spend a lot of time growing up. And I think Mum's whole reason for wanting to, well, Mum and Dad, I should say, wanting to homeschool us was they wanted to be the biggest influences on our lives, not the teacher in the classroom or someone outside the home, that they wanted their values to be instilled in us. So I think that now looking back, I think that's been such an advantage of, yeah, just our relationship. And then probably the second one is, yeah, we got to like travel a lot. You know, Dad's from the UK, and most years or every second year we would go over there, or, you know, our Nana would take us to Aussie or whatever it might be. We didn't have to go on the school holidays. Like Matt touched on earlier, just the flexibility with sport and travel, and just being able to fit in our schooling life around what was important to our family, I think. And those are definitely two big advantages that I can think of.
For me, I was, the transition to high school from being home educated was quite interesting, and definitely had its ups and downs, I would say. But I think what I noticed was, kind of taking a step back and reflecting on that, was it felt very, obviously compared to what we had, very structured, right? And it's just kind of mass people management, and that's why there's a timetable and you move between classes. And I just remember feeling it was an odd feeling to ask to go to the toilet, or to like only have a certain window to eat lunch and stuff. So that was very new and very different for obvious reasons. But what I did pick up was also, it felt very much like I was spoon-fed information. I think we were so used to having a learning environment where we often were, it was self-driven learning. We had the support, and Mum did an amazing job of providing the curriculum and supporting us with tutors and whatnot in spaces that we needed it. But I think ultimately we built an ability to learn in our own way and research and to find things out and stuff like that. And I think that showed itself when I went to university, because I felt quite prepared for that type of learning where you actually aren't spoon-fed. You have to
figure it out.
There's hundreds of people. I did business, so there's hundreds of people in the auditorium. You don't get the teacher telling you how to get achieved or merit, and that literally study these 2 or 3 things and you'll pass. It doesn't work like that. So I think home education prepared me for that in a way that was really valuable.
Do you think, just reflecting on that illustration, do you think that was, you could see the advantage amongst your peers at university?
Yeah, I think so. And it wasn't necessarily like, oh, these people are struggling, because that certainly wasn't the case. There were so many impressive people that I felt at times very, behind the 8 ball. But I did feel like in comparing home education versus traditional learning in the school environment, that, I learned more, an ability to more like critically think and to pursue areas that I needed to research or to apply myself in a different way, rather than relying on a teacher just to tell me exactly what I needed to do and then kind of box in, the things that I needed to pass or the things that I needed to get a merit or what have you. I think I just had a broader ability to pursue research and that kind of thing. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. I don't mean this next comment to sound judgy towards people who went through the school system, but when you were out, and because growing up in a homeschool family was very normal, you didn't know anything else, but sooner or later as an adult you have to go out into the world where most of the other adults around you grew up in a different type of system. So I'm curious to know what you might have started to notice that you thought was normal, but other people either were behaving in a certain way or maybe weren't behaving in a certain way that was normal for you.
I guess mine was more at school, like when I went into school. Yeah, obviously it's always been us, or when we go to tutors we'd have like small group learning, and I think for the most part everyone was really positive and wanted to learn. And then when I went to school, just went from being home educated to one of the biggest schools in New Zealand, so that in itself was quite confronting. But just the way that the classroom is structured, and just I couldn't believe how many kids were like disrespectful to teachers and that kind of thing, and obviously not having a positive relationship, of learning and wanting to be there. They were kind of forced into being in the classroom, and I was quite shocked, to be honest.
I would say something similar, like in terms of, different motivation levels and different levels of respect or disrespect. And I think that was very evident. But, if I can think about it from the other way around, like that's also life, right? And so there were people in that school. It's not like every single person was disrespectful, but people it's kind of, you could argue maybe that we were a little bit sheltered and we
Yeah.
were kind of just like in this perfect little world that isn't reflective of life in terms of being exposed to, you know, if you're in a workplace and there's, how do you handle people that are disrespectful to your boss or to you, and then how do you stay, I don't know, efficient or kind of continue to do your job or to hand your assignment in or what have you. So I think there were certainly people that were able to navigate that really well and be ultra successful, and I think we weren't exposed to some of that, you know, not adversity might be a bit strong, but like, you know, just different things that are coming at you in a school environment that you just don't get at home.
I think that we did get a lot of that through sport though. I think that, you know, Mum might have, she obviously, like you mentioned earlier, she was a big driver in the homeschool community of providing activities outside of the home, I guess, whether it was sporting or setting up different clubs or arts festival or whatever. You know, she was very involved in all of those things. So having to be productive in a, you know, bit more a group setting or and I think
exposed to different personalities. Yeah,
and I think sport, especially like Matt was saying about in the higher you get and the more that you're asked of, and you might get pushback from players, or like I mentioned earlier about different personalities and things like that.
Yeah, pressure.
We definitely had to deal with those things in sport. So I think we didn't necessarily get it at school. However, I think we definitely got to.
Let's move back and do a little bit of the bookwork, academic side of school, because, you know, you might want to go out and shoot hoops, but you still have to learn to do maths and read and so forth. Do you remember following a boxed curriculum, a bought curriculum where it just comes in and it's just given to you, or was it more designed around what your learning needs were? So, and if it was, how did that look? What did you do? What books did you have?
I think that Mum always said to us that, you know, reading, writing, maths was always kind of like our staples. We had to do that kind of stuff every day. And I definitely remember having, you know, consistent textbooks and stuff for maths and English, but I think that she was also very flexible and open. Like every year she would ask us, you know, what do you want to do this year? What don't you want to do this year? And we kind of came to maybe not like an arrangement, but what was important to us versus what she felt, you know, we needed to do.
Some of it was non-negotiable. We didn't just get our own way, but she did take our opinion into account.
Yeah, so I think that, for your question, we definitely followed a curriculum with, those three that I probably mentioned, but I think outside of that we did a lot of, you know, for science and stuff, a lot of experiments and maybe didn't follow an exact curriculum. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. And I think she did a really good job of like outsourcing, you know, things that maybe she wasn't experienced in, or maybe she felt like we needed a little bit more attention in, or what have you. I think she did a really good job of that. And I'm sure there's a few motivations at play, you know, the social element, and it felt very busy, but in a good way, in a healthy way.
And more so as we got older. I think when she felt like maybe we needed more attention, like Matt said, for that stuff, more specific detail. And we tried so many different things that I don't think we would have done in the traditional education, like woodworks and sewing class and electronics and so many different things. And then instruments that we weren't so keen on and definitely haven't stuck with. But, you know, we did try so many different things. And, you know, thinking back as an adult now, like, that's so cool. Maybe we didn't think so at the time, but we have had the opportunity to try, you know, so many different things, and Mum and Dad kind of provided that for us, I guess.
So with your vast years of experience, really, with your homeschooling, going from young all the way through, so to the parents probably that are listening now, what would you recommend to them as they are putting together their own homeschooling experience for their children, and they're looking to the experience of, well, the pioneers really, the veterans? What do you think a parent nowadays should do more of, or back off and this doesn't matter so much? Here's what we think is important from your perspective?
I think from me, every child is so different, and I think that's the beauty of homeschool, right? You know, what mum might have done for Matt and myself, she may not have done for our sister. So I think just, following your child's interests and, you know, their passions and, like listening to them, but obviously also they need that direction. So, I wouldn't say one child needs more of this and less of that. Like, it's just...
Yeah, and I think I would fully agree with that. The only thing that I feel like is what I really enjoyed about the experience is that, you know, there was definitely the non-negotiables, right? And the things that we had to do every day or, you know, every year that maybe sometimes we didn't want to do, but looking back was really important.
Yeah.
But I think what I really enjoyed about our experience was that we could lean into what became more and more evident that our passions were and our maybe our strengths were. And I think we're all, I'd like to think we're all quite highly functioning people in society. And I think my mum maybe you have a better perspective on this than we do, but it didn't seem like she was super strict. She wasn't like, well, you have to do bookwork from 9 to 3 and that, like XYZ, and this has to be followed by that. And there's a whole, 15-year, plan. It wasn't that at all. And I think we had the flexibility, and she was firm with us. We didn't get away with a lot, but at the same time, she wasn't super strict academically, that I think gave us room to grow into ourselves and pursue the things that became increasingly important to us. And that's not just sport, but that's an example, but we weren't necessarily like super science orientated, for example. So, I don't know the periodic table, but that hasn't hindered me in life, Maybe some people would be shocked by that, but that's okay, and we didn't spend a whole lot of time doing that. But I think that's just maybe I did more, maybe I know more in another field. I couldn't tell you what I do, but you know what I mean? Like, we just had, I guess, the space provided to us to kind of follow what we wanted to, and also I'm sure what my mum could start to pick up on, and dad.
I think that's really well answered from the both of you, because something that we hear regularly from homeschool mums is just this perpetual worry, bordering on panic sometimes, that they're either ruining their children or they're not doing enough, or have I done enough? But now, with the perspective of looking back over the years and seeing you growing through your homeschooling and into adulthood, and actually adulting really, really well, that comes as such an encouragement to the parents who are now committed to it.
I do remember, again, something that I thought, thinking back, like, Mum did a really good job of. She was very big on, like, experiences. I think she was very mindful that, again, it's not to sound like we didn't do schoolwork, but, like, pushing us to have to go and meet people, having to have interactions, having to be exposed to different environments, having to navigate things that we were really uncomfortable with. Like, I remember she put me in a speech class and I hated it. And I wouldn't sign myself up for it again, but it was helpful, and, different, doing economics and trying to do it. I don't know. We did a lot of practical as much as we did just heavy bookwork. And I think that was really intentional from her. But I think that stuff was, I feel like, a lot more transferable to life.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we had that kind of emphasis.
Yeah. Because I think, looking at myself, and probably our sister would agree that we're not massive academics. Neither of us have been to university, but, we more have that, we're very practical and we know how to navigate through life and our relationships with people in our workplaces and friendships and stuff. Like, I think that, what Mum and Dad, I guess, provided for us and pushed us to do different things, that's definitely transitioned into adulthood for sure.
I also remember that when your mum and I ran the business together for a few years, you children especially, perhaps more than my children, were very involved in it. And I remember thinking, this is going to be so good for them. They don't know it yet, but it's going to be so good for them. Do you have anything to say to that, your exposure to what it was like to run a small business from home and what you learned in it?
I think that was, again, another example of, ultimately you learn so much from your example too, right? Like just watching both of our parents, like we had a rental, like a investment property just next door, and just having some like ad hoc conversations around how that works, and like down payments and interest and equity and all of those types of things. And the business was another example of just my mum being an example of what entrepreneurialism is and trying something they're passionate about, and obviously working with you. And we were involved. It probably helped that sometimes the business was kind of run out of our home at times, so we were kind of forced into it. But that was something that I think, whether it was intentional or not, kind of started to chip away at us as young people, and thinking about, what could we do? Or, like she's got a passion for organic food and stuff, and maybe that's not our passion, but we could transfer that to something that we were passionate about.
And I think the other side of it also was, it probably taught us lessons of maybe you don't feel like getting up and doing it, but you've got this responsibility. You're like, this is your business, that you have to get out and do it. We might not have wanted to be out packing boxes, but it showed us that this is what it takes to run a successful business.
It takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I think with us, we've dabbled in a few things. We don't own successful businesses, but we've tried different things, and it's like, it's a lot of work, and it's not just something that you wake up one day and go, we'll just give it a crack. Like, yes, that's important, but
just that, I guess, work ethic as well. That you've got to kind of get up and do it, whether you're owning a business or work or whatever that.
Have you got any more advice to parents as they're putting together their homeschooling now? Anything else to say before I ask another question?
I don't know. I think it's so hard because we're not, we haven't been through it from, I'm sure there's so many things that you think about, right? And there's so many motivations and worries, like you said, but...
Well, what shouldn't they worry about?
Yeah, I was more going to say, like, I just feel, I feel like we were probably more towards the end of the spectrum where academics were very important and we did do a lot of it, but it wasn't the be-all and end-all. And so I think, if anything, we're maybe an example of, there's so many ways that people learn, and I think the business question is a great question because it shows just what a parent being an example of can teach you, and just, seeing my dad wake up every morning early and going to work, and just that, I feel like he never took a sick day, like, and looking back, and as much as our mum taught us so much by being there, our dad taught us so much from, like, not being there as much and just working hard and providing for us. And there's just so many things that we learned in our experience that weren't pure traditional academic things that I could imagine would be very, very overwhelming for parents, because there's just so much, right? You've got so many different options and avenues and subjects, and the 21st century, like, modern day, and how do you prepare for AI, and like, I don't know, there's probably just so much more now, even compared to when we were growing up, that I could imagine your head would just be spinning if you spent too much time worrying about it.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think Mum and Dad just did do a really good job of having those extra activities for us to be involved with different kids and different families. And I just don't think our homeschooling experience would have been the same without that. So I think definitely to get your kids involved in, as much as they can, really, as much as you want them to be. Get them out there trying different things and connecting with other families. I think that's,
that makes it enjoyable too.
Yeah.
Can you think of anything else that hasn't come up in conversation so far that you think would be of value? I don't want to miss anything out.
The three of us as siblings all had different experiences, and we're all quite different people in both the way that we learn and our passions, and also I feel like our middle sister's super creative, just so strong in that area. And I remember she did things that were quite different to what we did because she was just really good at it, and that was her passion. And Mum really did a good job of seeing that, but then also providing her space to go and pursue some of those things. And Kate and I didn't do those things, and we never really that was fine. We didn't have an issue with that because that wasn't our thing.
That's so true. Adjusting to each individual's needs. Yeah, we were very, we did a lot of stuff together and the same, but we definitely. I remember
telling my mum I want to do business, and ultimately I did kind of pursue that at university. And I remember I said that speech class, and I did a few things up at Massey Uni, and I remember being put in a few things that my sisters didn't get put in. And so, that's just kind of I didn't really think about that, but that's interesting. And also gives us our own bloody next to each other for 24 hours a day, right? It can be, I'm sure it can be a little bit draining. I can't really remember being too fed up, but it's, to just kind of have your own, feeling like you're doing your own thing as well. Yeah. Can be empowering.
By yourself without your sisters.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you by yourself without the others, yes. Right. So that question I've got for you here, where I'm going to ask you both that if you were sitting next to, let's say, an 8-year-old girl for you, Kate, and then an older 15-year-old girl, and then for you, Matt, an 8-year-old boy and a 15-year-old boy, what advice would you give to them, experienced student to student right now? Would you like to start first, Kate? Would you like Matt to get into that one first? All right.
I just don't know what my difference would be between the 8 and 15-year-old.
What advice?
8's very young, yeah. I don't know, I think 8-year-old is just try so many things, do whatever you can and try as many different classes or, different opportunities that come your way, or try so many sports. And I don't know, just I feel 8's very young. I don't know what else you'd be thinking about, but just trying to have fun and not getting too stressed out. Or you definitely shouldn't be stressed out about anything at that age.
Listen to your mum and dad.
Yeah. And then I think at 15, I think that's the age-old question is the social experience, and how are you going to, how many times you get that question as a parent, and it's the same for us as the kids. Is when you go to basketball practice or when you go to a camp for the first time, you're oh yeah, I'm homeschooled. It's oh my gosh, that's crazy. How do you make friends? I think whether you are super confident in that space and just brush it off, or you're more on the anxious side of things and navigating that, I just don't think it matters. I coach in high school sport now, and there's such at high school there's such an array of people and personalities and maturation and social skills and the whole 9 yards, that it's no different, right? So I would just say if you have any feeling of pressure or anxiety around the social side of being a homeschool kid, and you get that questioning or just that probing, whether it's obvious or subtle, just don't stress out about it. There's, no matter what environment you're in, whether you're at school or not at school, there's like-minded people, and people at your age and stage. So that's probably what I would say.
Thank you. Kate?
I don't know what to say after that. No, I think I agree. When you're younger, 7, 8 years old, is just to have fun and enjoy your time as a kid, and like try different things, learn as much as you can, but ultimately definitely have fun, I think. And then 15, obviously that's probably when you're growing up a little bit more, and you're kind of maybe know yourself a little bit more, or what direction you're heading in. And I think just have those conversations with your parents or siblings about what you want to do and focus on those and pursue those. But I think also, like, being a teenager these days, it is not as easy as it was with the world that we're in right now. So I think just so many kids grow up too fast. So I think a great thing of being homeschooled is I think it gives you a safe environment to be a kid. So I think just embrace that and enjoy time with your family, and learn as much as you can before you're out in the big bad world.
I would say one other thing, and it's kind of about going to a formal high school experience. I don't know what you think about this, having gone to it the same, Kate, but 15 could be if you have some ideas around wanting to have that experience of going to a public or private school, but going to have that experience, that could be a good time to bring that up with your parents if you are thinking about that. Just because I think, like, my experience was going in year 13 and looking back at it now, and again being in that setting and seeing year after year graduates coming through every year. Kids that are at school, when you go into year 13, you're thinking about leaving school. When you arrive in year 13, you're thinking, this is my last first day of school, this is my last first term, this is my last, you have the school ball, da-da-da-da-da, but everyone is already thinking about next year. So I think as a homeschool student, going into that environment where it's your first year and you're thinking about, I'm trying to make friends, I'm experiencing all of this for the first time, but everybody else has already got a foot out the door, that can be a little bit of a challenge. And it's not to say that I regret going, because I really enjoyed it, but I think it could have been a more meaningful experience if I had gone maybe for 2 or 3 years. So I think that's maybe just something to keep in mind. Like, if you're starting to think about going to high school, 15, you might be in year 11 or something like that, maybe. That could be a time where you're starting to think about, that experience as well.
And I think just one more thing to add as well for parents that might be listening to that and nervous about their kids wanting to go to school or anything like that. I just think back to, maybe some of the girls that played in my basketball team, that they were doing things that they maybe shouldn't have been doing. But I think that being at home and mum and dad instilling these strong values into us, as a teenager, I never felt that strong pressure to have to fit in with my peers. Like, if they wanted to go off and sneak out or do whatever they were going to do, I was strong enough to be like, I don't really want to do that, So I think, looking back as an adult now, and if, thinking about my kids, like, that does scare the living daylights out of me. But just knowing that what mum and dad instilled, those strong values, that as a teenager, when, you're at your most vulnerable probably, that I was strong enough to be like, no, I'm all good, like, I don't want to do that, thanks, is massive for me to look back on now, I guess. So, I guess just from Matt speaking on a student, on what students might be thinking, I think just as a parent, like, you can probably be confident at that age that, you've instilled these values in your kids, and, at some stage they're going to spread their wings, and you can be confident that you've done a really good job, I guess.
Well, thank you so much for your time. You've been generous, honest, and it's going to be so valuable to students who are listening, but also the parents who just need to know that everything's going to be okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.